Now I know I joke around a lot, and I try to tell you guys a lot of things on my little Instagram post.
Rest in peace, Darrell Sheets. Also, I know Daryl would want something positive out of this, so he had a guy like really tormenting him lately on cyberbullying.
At 5 p.m. on April 21st, 2026, Darrell Sheets was standing in his shop giving a thumbs up to a stranger. By 2 a.m., he was dead. And before he died, Daryl had already put on public record exactly what was destroying him, pointing directly at a world Jarrod Schulz had already fallen through. Police had already been warned that something was coming, and they said their hands were tied. So if the warning signs were there, why didn't anyone stop it? Join us as we find out what Daryl reveals about Jarrod before his death. The gambler who never walked away clean. Darrell Sheets had been doing this for over 30 years before a single camera ever pointed at him. Long before storage wars existed, he was showing up to storage auctions across Southern California with cash in hand and no safety net. He bought units that other people walked past, dragged whatever he found to swap meats, and sold it. Pure instinct, backed with whatever cash he had. When A&E launched Storage Wars in December 2010, Daryl was already a veteran. The show did not invent him. It just gave him an audience. He became the gambler, not because producers thought it made good television, but because it described exactly how he moved. He overbid on units nobody else wanted. He chased scores that looked like nothing from the doorway. And sometimes he was right in a way that left everyone else standing with their mouths open. In Season 3, he paid $3,600 for a unit that turned out to be full of original artwork by painter Frank Gutierrez. That collection was appraised at roughly $300,000, making it the single largest profit in the show's history. He also pulled out a substantial comic book collection, 4 drawings attributed to Pablo Picasso, and a handwritten Abraham Lincoln letter that sold for over $15,000. His catchphrase, "This is the wow factor," was not scripted. It was just what he said when he was right. Across 163 episodes and 15 seasons, his son Brandon worked alongside him on screen. And that dynamic, the old gambler teaching his son the trade, gave the show something none of the competitive drama could manufacture. Viewers who had never been near a storage unit in their lives kept coming back just to watch those two work together. But away from the cameras, Daryl was carrying things that never made air. In June 2018, he posted something on Instagram that most people at the time scrolled past. He described depression as the devil's way of attacking a person, something that knew no mercy, that came and went, that ruined relationships, destroyed positivity, and in some cases led to suicide. He called it a very real deal and tagged the post with the words, "Trust me, I know." At the time, nobody paid much attention. Daryl was loud and confident on screen, and people filed the post under personality, not crisis. Then, in 2019, he was hospitalized after being sick for 3 months. A post he later deleted revealed that he suffered from congestive heart failure and a severe issue with one of his lungs. He came back to the show for seasons 13, 14, and 15, but anyone paying close attention could see the pace had changed. By 2023, he was done. He moved to Lake Havasu City, Arizona, opened an antique shop called Havasu Show Me Your Junk, and started selling vintage signs, gas station memorabilia, and collectibles. His Instagram showed a man who had genuinely slowed down customers, with inventory updates that suggested nothing was actually happening. His last Instagram post went up in December 2025, and by February 2026, he had gone entirely quiet on Facebook, and nobody outside his immediate circle thought to ask why. But inside that circle, the silence was not peaceful. Something had been grinding at Darrell for years, and it had nothing to do with his heart or his shop. In March 2026, he finally put it in writing, and what he described made it clear he had been living in fear for a very long time. He wrote it all down, named the person responsible, and filed the reports. So why was he still in danger? 3 years of being hunted. The Facebook post Darrell published in March 2026 read like a police report. Someone had been hacking his accounts and posting under his name statements about his sexuality, fabricated disputes with a local children's arcade owner, and content designed to make people in Lake Havasu City angry enough to act. And they did act. People showed up at Havasu, "Show me your junk," wanting to harm him over posts he had never written. He was clear about all of it. The posts were not from him. He had no dispute with the arcade owner, and he was not the person the content made him out to be. In his own words, he was extremely sorry and sick over what was being spread in his name. But Darrell was not just defending himself. He was also laying out a pattern. The same person, he wrote, had been going after other small businesses in the city, using his name to threaten them, posing as a handyman, collecting money from people who thought they were dealing with Darrell Sheets, leaving a documented trail of extortion carried out under a borrowed identity across 3 years and multiple victims. He called it a felony, said the police were aware, and said their hands were tied because the platform where all of it was happening allowed it to continue. 6 weeks after writing that post, he was dead. When the news broke on the morning of April 22, 2026, the people who had been close to Darrell started talking, and what they said made it clear that the March Facebook post was not where the fear had started. It was just the first time Darrell had let the public see it. Renee Nazoda posted a video to Instagram within hours. He and Darrell had competed hard against each other on the show for years, and fans assumed that meant they had no real relationship. Renee said that was not true. He said the person targeting Darrell had been tormenting him in the period leading up to his death, that Darrell had been posting about it consistently and leaving a documented trail, and that law enforcement needed to follow it. He was not treating this as a minor matter. Someone needed to answer for what had happened. Laura Dotson, who had worked alongside Darrell on the show for over a decade, spoke publicly about what Darrell's family had shared with her. 3 years of harassment had made Darrell feel diminished, her exact word, and she said he was terrified, not just for himself, but for the people around him. He did not know why he had been chosen. She also said he had been carrying other weight. His health had never fully stabilized after the 2019 surgery, and his personal relationships had been unsteady for a period. He was, she said, a wonderful man who believed deeply in his faith. Sergeant Kyle Ridgway of the Lake Havasu City Police Department confirmed publicly after Darrell's death that the department was aware of the cyberbullying allegations and was treating them as part of the active investigation. And as of May 2026, no arrest had been made. As of May 2026, no arrest had been made. The part that stayed with the people who knew him was the timeline. Darrell had not disappeared quietly. He had posted, named the problem, filed reports, and left a paper trail that anyone could follow. And none of it was enough. On the morning of April 22nd, officers arrived at his home and found him dead from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head, pronounced dead at the scene at 67 years old. He left behind his son Brandon, his daughter Tiffany, his grandchild Zoe, and his daughter Kimber, a family that had watched him fight this for years and still could not stop what happened that morning. While Darrell was fighting for his name in Arizona, Jarrod Schulz had already lost his and Daryl had seen it happen in real time. What Daryl saw happening to Jarrod. Back in 2018, when Daryl posted that raw public admission about depression, Jarrod Schulz and Brandy Passante were still appearing together on Storage Wars, bidding at the same auctions, running the same thrift store, being sold to the audience as America's favorite bickering couple. But they were not together. The relationship had fallen apart during the production hiatus, and neither of them said a word about it publicly. They kept showing up, kept filming, kept the whole thing going on screen while something else entirely was happening behind it. When season 13 finally returned in April 2021, Brandy said on camera that she was not with Jarrod anymore. The split, she said, had happened after season 12 wrapped. That was all she offered. 10 days later, Jarrod walked into a bar in Orange County, where Brandy was with a group of friends. An argument broke out. She told him to leave, and he did not. He allegedly pushed her twice, while yelling at her and the people around her. By the time police arrived, he had gone. When officers tracked him down days later, he denied touching her. The Orange County District Attorney's Office filed 1 count of misdemeanor domestic violence battery regardless. A&E opened an investigation into whether Jarrod should stay on the show. And that was the last time he appeared as a full-time cast member. Daryl was back on the show when this was happening, watching Brandy return to season 13 and keep working while Jarrod disappeared from the cast and the legal proceedings piled up. A resisting an officer charge from 2019, the domestic violence charge from 2021, and a DUI from October of the same year. All 3 eventually combined into a single proceeding scheduled for a jury trial in mid-2023, then pushed back. No public verdict has ever been confirmed in those cases. And Jarrod had been here before. In 1997, he had been sentenced to 16 months in state prison for felony drug possession. Someone close to Jarrod told a reporter at the time that doing 16 months alongside murderers and rapists had made him realize where his path was heading, and that it was the thing that finally turned him around. He had built a real life after it, a long-term relationship, a television career, and a business that put his name on a storefront in Orange County. By 2026, that business was a bar in Lake Forest, California, called the Rush Bar and Grill. He had a new girlfriend. He was no longer part of Storage Wars, and he was watching from the outside as a show he had helped build continued without him. He had been on the show through all of it, through the split, through the charges, through Brandy coming back alone to season 14 and season 15, while Jarrod stayed out of frame. And in 2018, before any of it became public, Daryl had already told anyone who read his Instagram that depression was real, that it destroyed relationships, that it led to suicide in some cases, and that he knew this from personal experience. He had written those words 8 years before officers arrived at his door, and at the time, not one person who read them understood what they were actually looking at. The people who worked alongside both men for years. What did they actually know? And when did they know it? What the cast knew and when they knew it. The people who had worked alongside Daryl for years had one thing in common. When the news broke, they all said they were not surprised by the cyberbullying. They were surprised it had ended this way. Dave Hester, who had clashed openly with Daryl and Brandon throughout their time on the show, went on camera within days. He said he had seen things circulating online since the news broke that he described as silly and goofy, and confirmed he was aware of the cyberbullying allegations. He did not elaborate further, but Dave going on camera at all, given the history between them, said something about how hard this had landed across the entire community. Renee was first. He had competed with Daryl for years, and audiences had assumed the rivalry was personal. He made clear it was not. Off camera, they were friendly. He described Daryl as someone who worked harder than most people and cared more about his family than anything else. He said the competition had been real. The animosity had not. Laura Dotson spoke more directly. She told a publication what Daryl's family had shared with her privately, that 3 years of harassment had made him feel diminished, that he had been terrified for himself and the people close to him, and that he did not understand why he had been targeted. She also said Daryl had been carrying other weight. He had never come back from 2019 the same way he went in. His personal relationships had been unsteady for a period, but he was, she said, a loving man who believed in God, and she wanted that on the record. Dan Dotson shared something else. He recalled a conversation where Daryl had once expressed disbelief about a friend who had died by suicide, saying that person must have been in tremendous pain to reach that point. Dan did not need to say anything else for people to understand what he was getting at. Brandy Passante posted something that most people read as a tribute and moved on from. It was more than that. She had lost a parent and a sibling to suicide, and she wrote directly to anyone who might be struggling, telling them their pain would not disappear but would transfer to the people left behind. She urged people to call for help. She had carried all of that grief, the fallout from Jarrod's charges, the split, and the scrutiny of every season she showed up and kept working. And none of it had been visible in the edit. The Storage Wars family was in the same room together when Brandy broke the news of Daryl's death. Some of his co-stars quietly offered to help the Sheets family with funeral costs. Storage Wars Season 17 had premiered in February 2026, 2 months before Daryl died. The show had not paused, and Daryl was not in it. Both men had left the show with nothing but their names, and for one of them, even that had been taken. So what actually happened when the machine moved on and left them behind? The machine that kept running. Storage Wars did not stop when Darrell Sheets died. Season 17 had already premiered in February 2026, and Season 16 had run through 2025 with Brandy still bidding, Dave Hester back after a long absence, and new buyers filling the gaps left behind. But the format, the parking lots, and the auctioneer's countdown never changed. With Daryl gone and Jarrod Schulz no longer part of it, the show just kept moving as if nothing had changed. Daryl had understood this was coming. When he left after Season 15 in 2023, he did not leave with any announcement. His body had already decided for him years earlier, and anyone who had watched his last few seasons closely had seen the change. He opened a shop in Lake Havasu and tried to build something that did not require him to perform. Jarrod had been pushed out years earlier, and with far more noise, the domestic violence charge, the DUI, the resisting arrest case, and the A&E investigation. By 2026, he was running a bar in California, building a different kind of life, watching from outside a machine that had already moved on without him. Both men had their most visible relationships break apart during or after their time on the show. Daryl split from his ex-wife Kimber in 2016, partway through his run. Jarrod and Brandy's relationship of nearly 20 years collapsed between seasons, and was only confirmed publicly when Brandy said 4 words on camera in the Season 13 premiere. Both ended up alone with their aftermath, Jarrod in a bar in Lake Forest, and Daryl in an antique shop in Lake Havasu, trying to figure out what life looked like without the structure the show had given them. For Jarrod, what came next were charges he never fully addressed in public, a new relationship, and a business that had nothing to do with storage. For Daryl, what came next was 3 years of someone using his public name as a weapon, impersonating him, extorting businesses in his town, and bringing strangers to his door. He had filed reports, posted warnings, and left a documented record of exactly what was being done to him. And in June 2018, 8 years before he died, he had already written publicly about depression eating away at a person from the inside, about how it destroyed relationships, destroyed positivity, led to suicide in some cases, and allowed no rest for the people suffering through it. The Lake Havasu City Police Department confirmed, after his death, that the cyberbullying investigation was active. As of May 2026, no arrest had been made. The platform where the harassment originated had not been compelled to act. He had written those words 8 years before officers arrived at his door, and, at the time, not one person who read them understood what they were actually looking at. If Daryl had still been on Storage Wars in 2026, still pulling ratings, still generating press, do you think the platform and the network would have moved faster to protect him? Jarrod Schulz rebuilt. Darrell Sheets didn't survive it. What made the difference? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.